the age of nearly 19, I've grown up in a world of technological innovation and constant change. I've ridden the highly dynamic and virtual world known as the internet and the World Wide Web. I can remember when a 3.5-inch floppy disk was about enough storage space that anyone needed for a lifetime. Now you can barely store one digital photo on that. And when the internet was dial-up, and it was about the best you were ever going to get. But in a period of, say, 5 to 10 years, in my lifetime, all of that dramatically changed. There's no euphoria anymore over being able to communicate with the whole world without even really thinking about it, even make video calls with some of the latest technology that we have to all 4 corners of the globe. Or being able to, for example, have a lifetime's worth of the New York Times just there at your fingertips, no matter where you are in the world. And there's certainly no fascination over how, I think, the reason that is often cited for me getting a love of technology, which my parents always say, about the age of 3, this is in 1996, the personal computer was starting to enter the home. It started to become affordable. It was still expensive, but it was affordable. And my parents bought one. It was some old machine which you probably wouldn't even touch now. And as a 3-year-old, I can't really remember. But they often say that I was able to sit down at the computer terminal and type my name into the screen, which seems really simple, Matthew Huxtable. Anyone can do that. But back then, when you'd grown up at such a young age, not knowing technology and having atrocious handwriting, which is still the case today, being able to do something which someone many years older than you could also do exactly the same way was quite an eye-opener, or at least they think it was. And back then, many parents wouldn't have let their young 3-year-olds near such an expensive piece of technology. But I'm thankful that mine did, because it's really set me up for a lot of the things that I've done in my life since. Now, you really are a dinosaur if you don't have 3 computers, 2 laptops, a smartphone, and a tablet, all of which you mostly never use. And all the time having them connected to your email and your Twitter, and constantly checking Facebook every 5 minutes in case someone you vaguely know wrote to you about something remotely interesting. Does that sound like a familiar lifestyle? It might be one of your lifestyles. It might seem familiar. It certainly does to me, because I'm part of a growing group of people, and definitely part of the generation, which is criticized for being too connected to our digital lives. We're criticized by the media and blasted by our fellow TED speakers. And there's even a book now entitled The Dumbest Generation, which is specifically aimed at people my age and how we're constantly connected to our technology. And in some respects, I do see their point. Too much of anything, a good thing or a bad thing, is always going to be a bad thing. And you have to get variety in your life. But if it were not for technology, if it were not for the online communities that I was able to access as a result of the power of technology, there's no way that I'd actually be stood here right now speaking to you today. See, it's my belief that technology isn't just a hindrance or a curse to our lives. It's become integral to them, and because we've allowed it to become so, because we've realized the power of the things that we can do and the places that we can go in all sorts of professions and personally by allowing technology to take such center stage. And I'm here to make the case today that I think technology deserves to be treated with a great deal of respect. Because if we can do that, if we can treat technology with respect, then we can achieve some great things in return. Now, that's definitely possible, and the human race can definitely do that. But I think before we can do that, we need to address some of the common misperceptions and really break down the barriers of some of these factually inaccurate things which have become so ingrained in our brains. Now, one of those misperceptions is that of social media. And I'm sure there's very few people, if any, here today who've not heard of the big players in this market. Sites like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, not to mention the hundreds, thousands of other sites which have grown around this idea to serve unique and often very niche markets. And just stop for a moment and think, how quickly have we let those control our lives? How quickly have they changed our lives? I believe Facebook was founded in 2004, but it wasn't really until sort of like the last 5 years, maybe the last 3 years, that it's really become important to us. And it's really, really changed the way that we really do interact with people. And as with all fantastic ideas, it was a great idea at the outset. It allowed people to connect with the whole world really easily, really simply. It streamlined the communication. In some respects, it went from making us a one-to-one way of communicating via the telephone or via email with a one-to-many. And we're going through exponential growth where with all the new developments, the one-to-many, the many just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But Facebook, Twitter, yes, they were fantastic, and the idea is great. But it didn't take long for them to morph into just another tool to help our lives. It didn't take long for them to become another tool which could hinder our lives. They've revolutionized the business and the advertising worlds, and they've even proven to be valuable assets in times of global humanitarian crisis, natural disaster. Indeed, the Middle East uprisings have been really driven by some of the social media which those people have had access to. But are they really revolutionary? Are these tools actually something that we can call a revolution? I don't think so. They've grown out of a perceived need to organize the world's information more logically and to make the world a more open and a more connected place. And they do that really well. So where does that information come from that we feed into our social lives? Now, if you have a social life which is actually your real life and not the life that you would like to be, because there's people out there like that, then you really do have to push away from the computer, push away from the keyboard, and go and experience new things in life. Go to new places, interact with new people, and the people that you've always interacted with, because we all have friends, right? But the important point is that you have to do that away from the PC. Nothing original happens online, and community certainly doesn't exist there. The community is offline, and we're just finding a different way of sharing our experiences with the world. Now, when my family had some sad news about 2 weeks ago, we chose to share that on social media sites rather than the conventional method we might have chosen, which would have been to pick up the phone and to ring a few people. And we're really thankful for the fact that in doing so, not only were we able to effortlessly communicate the information we needed to communicate with those for whom it mattered, but we also received a lot of support in return, and we are really thankful of that. But as I was saying, nothing original ever happened online. Nothing actually took place in front of the computer. We were just using it as a tool to communicate. Now, I didn't actually enter the social world, unlike many of my peers, until about the age of 16. And even then I did so reluctantly, because it's not always clear kind of how these tools can really change and impact your life. Are they safe? Are they secure? Is the information that I'm putting out there going to be held and only shared with the people I want to share it with? And indeed, technology has become so big that it's so easy to share blatant lies in exactly the same way as you can share the complete truth. That you kind of have to really apply a filter to how you use these tools. And kind of, I didn't understand how a lot of it worked, and that's why I didn't sign up when many of my peers were doing it 2-3 years before. But it reached a stage where I felt as if I was being left out, as if there were things taking place online which I wasn't being told about, and quite rightly so, because if 99% of your peer group is using some way of communicating, they're hardly going to come and tell you specially another way, or many people won't. So, moving on a little, based on my own personal experience, I know that community can exist in places you would least expect, and you'll stumble upon them when you're least expecting it. Before I was online on social media, that doesn't mean to say I didn't use the internet. Everyone my age did. But I spent my time elsewhere, somewhere where community existed long before the turn of the century. And it's my belief that using technology to access those communities isn't going to damage anyone. The telephone never did. That was a new revolution, maybe when some of the people here today were growing up. So how is using a computer and accessing the internet going to damage my generation? Well, quite frankly, it isn't. It's an urban myth, essentially. I'm stood here today, having grown up in a modestly sized town in semi-rural England, and I can only give credit to the communities which have been built and managed and fostered by others for allowing me to achieve that. Now, next week, I'll be returning to a place that some people hold very special in their hearts. This place, some of you might recognize, it looks a bit like Hogwarts. And as Brian said earlier, this is my college in Cambridge. It's one of the 31 constituent colleges, because Cambridge operates a collegiate system. It's known as St. John's College, and I'm proud to say that for 6 months of the year, it's my home and my workplace, where I'm studying starting next week for my second year of a 3-year computer science degree. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity that community has allowed me to aspire to such a world-renowned place. But it's not all about academic performance, and I think that's really second to how someone conducts themselves as a person. And I feel my experience is just one such example of that. Because at the age of, say, 11, I was experimenting with computer servers at home, using random bits of hardware that we had lying around the house. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. And basically, I learned by either what I could frantically search on Google when it was broken, or what I could learn to fix myself when it was broken. And it would later become an important vocation for me. But back then, I needed somewhere to learn more from. And there's always a solution, because along came a site called Experts Exchange. And the purpose of this site is a volunteer community whose purpose is to link people who can share knowledge, IT professionals and many other leagues of people from all over the world, with people who need help with that, need a bit of a helping hand, maybe on their work machines or their home or whatever. And I very quickly realized that this was no ordinary ecosystem. It was a place where technology professionals quite literally burn their midnight oil to help others, and they get satisfaction out of helping others. I realized that by signing up to this site, I was able to contribute just a little tiny bit of information, but I was able to participate in a community of professionals much older than me, and to really understand how the IT community and the technology community goes about its business, what the etiquette is, how professionals conduct themselves. And I think this was really important. It was really vital. I know that in my participation, I've grown a network of people the world over who I'm very proud to call my friends. And they will always be there for me, as I would be for them, in times of happiness and sadness. And I was able to do that because there was never any age problem. The technology that I was using, the internet, formed an anonymous bridge, if you like, between me and the rest of the world. It kind of reduces your inhibitions because no one really wants to ask how old you are, what you look like. All they're concerned about is the written word that you put down. And that's really, really quite a surreal experience. I knew it was always a risky strategy, and one day people would find out. And that happened 2.5 years ago, right here in San Luis Obispo, when I came to the United States for the first time. And I can honestly say that fusing my avatar, which is known as Tiger Map, with the real person was quite an interesting experience. I came with my family, and people thought that Matthew Huxtable was my dad, not me. They thought it was my dad. So that's really my story of how I've come to be stood here today, to share my story with you in exactly the same way as there's millions of similar stories the world over, which go along a similar line. And I'm really thankful that the people who have cared for me and nurtured me over the years never had the prejudices that a lot of people seem to have about technology. And they allowed me to use technology to really interact with people and do some great things, which I'm really proud of. So next time someone, maybe it's your son or your daughter, uses their gadgets too much, their computers, their laptops, their smartphones, just remember that, yes, they might be using social media too much, but there's always the chink of possibility that very secretly, very quietly, they could just be changing the world in their own little tiny way. Thank you very much.